Before I get into this review, I'm going to be at Fantastic Fest for the next week, and I'll be reviewing movies here and there of the ones I like, the ones I want to talk to you guys about. So if you want more Fantastic Fest coverage, remember to follow me on Twitter or stay here and follow my YouTube and watch as I post stuff. Yeah, anyways, let's get into the review. The best way I could describe Terrifier 3 is if the devil were to put you in his mouth right now and chew you up into little pieces and continue to do so for 2 hours. It's an onslaught of malice, and it's so much fun. Never has watching something so evil been such an exciting time. Which sounds insane to say, but that's honestly the best way to describe this movie. I think at this point, fans know what they're getting into with this franchise, so none of the gore really comes as a surprise, but somehow the makeup team and Damien Leone somehow managed to make things just as shocking as before, if not more. I think the best way to describe this franchise as a whole is if you have a line, each Terrifier entry decides to cross that line. The first one crosses it with its intense gore, the second one crosses it even further with more intense gore, especially that bedroom scene, and the third one goes above and beyond to do things that I've never seen done in horror movies. I'm not a very squeamish guy, but the Terrifier movies really get me gagging, and especially on this one. I don't know if it was because I was eating during the movie, I was eating a pretzel, or if because I was in a room full of people watching this movie, because this is the first time I've seen this franchise in theaters. Something about this entry felt so much more disgusting than the previous one. One thing I noticed that I hear a lot of people talking about is that this movie takes kind of the malice and the anger and the terrifiedness from the first movie and mixes it kind of with the story elements of the second movie and then ups the gore by tenfold. It's honestly such a piece of art at this point, no pun intended, because Damien Leone and his team make some of the coolest practical effects I've ever seen personally. Each and every kill in this movie is better than the last, and every time you see a crazy sequence, you're like, no way they top it, and then they do in the next one. The opening of this horror movie, I think, is one of the most terrifying moments I've seen in a horror movie in recent years. You have Art the Clown slithering around in a Santa Claus outfit, and that's in this cold open of this movie, and I won't tell you what happens in it in particular, but let's just say it's a horrific sequence, and it's actually one of my fears that I constantly get scared of. Damien Leone also has stepped up his writing game. I feel like this movie is a lot more coherent. My only problem with it is it does feel like a part 1 of Terrifier 3. It doesn't feel like Terrifier 3. It feels like Terrifier 3 part 1, and Terrifier 4 is more like a Terrifier 3 part 2, is what it seems like. The writing in this one answers a lot of the questions in Terrifier 2. I just wish it didn't leave me with more questions. Lauren Lavera also gives a really outstanding performance. She was great in the last movie, but in this one, she is so much better, which is kind of crazy to think of because already her performance was fantastic in the last one. So to see her take it to even higher levels is crazy. I think she's definitely going to go down in history as one of the best scream queens of all time. I would love to see her in more horror movies. Obviously, I want her to stay in the Terrifier franchise, but seeing her be the lead on other horror movies would be a very fascinating thing to me. She also gives this range of emotion that I feel really works with her character. In particular, she begins to act like her mother at times from the last movie, and I think that's a great way to show that trauma response of the events of the last film. On top of the fact that her brother's trying to move on, so that dynamic between them and how this incident from the previous movie kind of drove a wedge between them is really cool. It gets into a bit more of the lore and demon stuff. It's definitely become a demon movie at this point. I won't spoil why that is, but there are a lot of sequences in this movie where it's like, okay, yeah, they're just making this a movie about demons. And if you've seen All Hallows Eve, that's a good indicator of where this franchise is going. So All Hallows Eve is the anthology film series where Art the Clown was first shown off. Or maybe that wasn't his very first time shown off. I think there was a short film before that where he was shown off for the first time, but his first feature film was this anthology film, right? And so this franchise is going in the direction of that All Hallows Eve movie. Also, David Howard Thornton, he's such a good actor. He plays Art spectacularly. Obviously, every entry, Art's been great, but in this one in particular, the evil is on full display, and I think he just does such a good job at this silent killer that is a lot more terrifying. You see a Michael Myers, and you're like, he's really not that scary. Even though he is quiet, he's not that scary. Let's be quite real. And then you look at someone like Freddy, and sometimes it's hard to be scared of Freddy because he talks so much. He's cracking so many jokes. But Art the Clown is like the perfect mix of the two. He's like the Michael Myers and the Freddy Krueger together, which I think makes him the ultimate scary horror villain. He's quickly shooting up to the top of my list of favorite horror villains, and so I'm excited to see him keep getting movies. I'm glad they announced Terrifier 4 at the panel yesterday for Fantastic Fest. You know, I'm talking about the amount of kills and how gruesome there are. There are a couple kills in here in particular that is just like, oh my god, I can't believe they did that. There's one sequence that I think goes to the level of the one kill that we all know of in that first movie, and I think a lot of fans are going to like it. But at the same time, there's going to be a lot of people complaining about this movie because there's a lot of sequences in here that cross lines that a lot of people are too afraid to cross. And I think that's what makes it such an interesting film. I'm excited to see how many people are mad about it, honestly. For me personally, I'm not mad about it. There were a few moments that I was like, oh my god, holy shit. But overall, I mean, obviously I'm not frustrated by this movie whatsoever. I think it's a fantastic piece of art, and I think Damien Leone and his entire team is remarkable, and I'm excited to see what they do with the fourth. This movie had a budget of $2 million, I believe, and the last one had a budget of $250,000, sorry, not million. So to see what they can do with an even higher budget next time, if they manage to pull that off and get a higher budget, is crazy. I know there was an article that came out recently about Leone being offered to restart the franchise with a much more like R-rated coat, while this is unrated. And I'm very glad he stuck to his guns and continued to make Terrifier what it is, because the minute you strip away all the grindhouse and grime of Terrifier, you lose what makes it so fun and so good. This movie is shot to look a lot more like that first one. I liked the look of the second Terrifier, but there's no denying how freaky and how gross feeling the first movie looks. And so to have that back in this third one is great. I know a lot of people are worried about the holiday aesthetic of it. Damien Leone in the Q&A was talking about how one of his favorite horror movies is Black Christmas, his favorite Christmas horror movie. And so he kind of just wanted to pay homage to that. And honestly, the Christmas stuff isn't really the forefront of this movie. It's kind of a backdrop and just leaves for some fun moments with Art the Clown. I think my biggest complaint, I already briefly touched on this, is really the story. I love the story and I love the direction Leone's taking it. I think his writing is great and he's building out this world in an interesting way that makes me want to know more. But each of these movies don't feel like their own condensed stories, more so pieces of a greater puzzle. And that works for a lot of people. But for me, I'm happy to have movies be pieces of a bigger puzzle, but I want answers in the films themselves. And when it comes to Terrifier 3, we are getting answers to a lot of things like Sienna's family history and things like that. But at the same time, the last act feels way too quick, feels like it leaves me with more questions rather than answering what I've already got. But at the same time, it does set up a good base for what's coming down the line. I think this franchise has like 2 more movies in it. I'd like to see them just keep going. But from the sound of it, it seems like you could make this into 2 more movies, like a 4 and 5, and then end there. But we'll see what Leone and the team have in mind. I'm excited to see what they do next. They're seriously, I don't know if any of them are watching this, but if you are, you guys are some of the most talented people in the horror industry right now. And just seeing what y'all make and what y'all craft is such a cool thing to be a part of. And I'm so glad to be in the horror community at a time like this. So congrats on the film. Everyone should go check it out when it comes out October 11th. I highly recommend it. And in terms of how much I liked it, I think as an overall package, I still really like Terrifier 2 a lot. I think it's tied for me right now with Terrifier 3. I'm going to have to sit on it to rank these 3 movies. Obviously, the first one is the lowest of them all, but that doesn't mean it's bad by any means. But I think right now, 2 and 3 are kind of neck and neck, and I need to figure out which one I like more. I think as a movie, I would say 3 is a little less narratively strong as the second one, but not by a whole lot. And I think 3 does a better job at capturing what makes Terrifier Terrifier. I mean, there's a lot of sequences in this movie where I was genuinely freaked out, and I feel like I didn't get that in the second movie as much, right? I was freaked out in the second movie for sure, but this one combines the scares with the gore in such a nice melding of tones that it's so good. It's such a good movie. Anyone who's saying it's boring or bad just doesn't like to have fun, because this movie is just so fun. And that's honestly, if I were to sum this entire review up into one thing, Terrifier 3 is fun. That's the best way I can put it. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Terrifier 3. Stay tuned for more Fantastic Fest coverage. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you're new and hit that like button. And comment below if you're excited for Terrifier 3. There's some crazy shit in this movie, and I can't wait for all of you to see it. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!